Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video, and today I brought on my Batman comics. I wanted to talk more specifically about 1980s Batman comics, but there was a low print run in the 1980s from Batman 357 to Batman 402, and I think there's a lot of really collectible issues in that range, and when you look on the census, especially in the CGC 9.8, for such an iconic character that Batman is, there's not a lot of CGC 9.8s within that range. So we'll get into a little more detail there, but first just wanted to remind you to join the team and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that bell as well. We're doing about 4 or 5 videos a week now, so hit that bell and you'll make sure to be on top of all our content, because we are doing a lot of videos. So if you subscribe to the channel, it'd be so appreciated. Thank you very much. But getting right into the Batman comics, this is one of my favorite eras and just favorite superheroes. Obviously, my favorite superhero being Batman, but one of my favorite eras to collect and invest in as well. I find Batman comics from this era are a lot cheaper than, say, like an Amazing Spider-Man comic, but still look really good on the census as well. And like I said, from Batman 357 to Batman 402 was a low print run of Batman. A lot of those issues, I don't know the exact prints, but there was about 50,000-ish issues during that time, which is a lot less than like an Amazing Spider-Man. So for such an iconic superhero, Batman, I really like to stick to iconic superheroes. Batman being such an iconic superhero. So I think this era is kind of a bit of a sweet spot to invest in. So my favorite issue from this era is Batman 366. And really it's kind of just because of the cover. I really love the cover. I really love kind of the look of Joker with, he's kind of got like dually wielding handguns. And such a cool cover. And Batman 366 has the first... it's the first Jason Todd as Robin. Basically the first time he puts on the costume kind of behind Batman's back in a way. Whereas we'll talk about another issue where he actually officially becomes Robin. But basically in this issue he becomes Robin. Plus you got a Joker appearance. And just looking on the census for Batman 366, 31% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8s. Some of those not being white pages, but what was it? 31% of all copies, and there's 139 of these in the CGC 9.8. And out of those 139, not all of them would be white pages, I would think. This being a 1983 book, that's when I find under 85, some of them are off-white to white pages. Not too many of these in the CGC 9.8, although this one, with that 31% of all graded copies being 9.8, that's a bit of a high ratio. So what that kind of means is, people really loved this issue from day one and put it away and kept really good care of it. And, since Batman comics aren't necessarily as traded as much as like Amazing Spider-Man comics, they don't really have low ratios on some of the issues. So this one being a little bit of a higher ratio with 31%, but there's only 139 of these. So that's a bit of the trade-off in Batman comics. There's less of the issue, even though they're more common in the 9.8s, if that makes sense. Like the ratio is usually higher in the 9.8s, even though there's less 9.8s overall. So Batman 366, I think, is a great one at a pretty affordable price. So this one is the newsstand version. I have a 366 here off camera. I couldn't fit them all on camera today. 366 in the direct version. You'll notice there's no UPC here. This one has the UPC code. So this Batman 366 I grabbed on auction for $200 Canadian. So I think a really good price for this. That's going to put it about 150 American. I think that's going to be like the best price you're almost going to get for a 9.8 white pages. This one being the older case, so usually older case comics, they'll go for about 25 5 to 50, or depending on, maybe about 10% more, or sorry, 10% less with the old case. You're going to pay about 10% more with the new case. So in the direct edition, I think, yeah, that's about as good of a price as you're going to get, $150 US. This newsstand edition is a little bit more rare, so I paid up for that one. I believe, like, after taxes and everything, because I bought it from a Canadian dealer, it was about $360 Canadian. So that's going to put it, $270, I guess, American-ish. Which I actually still think is a really good deal. That's, for $270 you can kind of get, Amazing Spider-Man 316, Amazing Spider-Man 298, sort of those secondary Amazing Spider-Man keys. And yeah, personally, I think, even though this isn't as popular, I think this is cooler, especially in the newsstand version. So one really quick, I didn't really look up too much, but it's one I have, is Batman 368. And this is the first time Jason Todd officially becomes Robin. In this one, he kind of puts on the suit, but this one, he's officially Robin. So 368 is a secondary key that you can get. And this one too, I grabbed for about that $150 in that $150 area. Yeah, I was kind of lucky with this one actually. It just kind of popped up in Canada. I didn't have to bring it over the border. Good price from just a collector in Canada that was selling his. Kind of wanted to get some money quick, I think. So 366 is a pretty decent investment. 368, it's not super rare on the census or anything. I didn't specifically look up the numbers for this video, but that's a cool one to have just for a nice cover, and more affordable as well. So this one, Batman 358, that low print Batman run I was talking about from 357 to 402, this being 358. This one in the 9.8 white pages is quite rare. It's 16% of all copies are graded, of all graded copies are graded 9.8s, and there's only 20 of these in the world. So I already made a video on this comic, kind of going over more detail. Being there's only 20 in the world, I think it's a really good investment. And also, Killer Croc's first appearance is pretty highly debated. And this really is somewhat known as like Killer Croc's first full appearance. Whereas in 357, the covers doesn't have Killer Croc in it, and he's in it at the end. So some people say that that's a bit of like a cameo appearance for Killer Croc. Where, usually if you get like one page in a comic, that's almost pretty much considered a full appearance. So, like I said, it's somewhat debated, but 357 is definitely like the key issue that's known as a key issue. First Jason Todd in number 357. I personally don't like the cover that much for me, and I find online it doesn't sell very well at all. So I do not have Batman 357. That's one that I am looking for if I see, like a perfectly centered copy with, nice crisp white pages and maybe a new case too. In Canada, I might pick that up, but it's not one that I'm like, gonna buy from the US and take it over the border and take, a couple chances and pay up for it or anything like that. Personally, I prefer Batman 358 more. There's only 20 in the world too, so this one's gonna be tougher to find. But as like an investment, I think Batman 358 is a really good one to have, and comes from that low print run as well. So a couple other issues from that low print run that I don't have. 357 being the main one, first Jason Todd, first Killer Croc. 386, which is first Black Mask. That's one that I'm definitely looking for, and I want to buy that in the 9.8 white pages. Yeah, I'm kind of hitting myself a little bit. Last year, a really nice one in Canada popped up, 9.8 white pages. Decent price. It was like, I think it was 625 bucks Canadian. So that's gonna kind of put it right a little under that $500 level American. And for first Black Mask, that's not bad. I think it was from a reputable seller too, so he probably would have asked for taxes in Canada too. But I really should have just paid up and bought that first Black Mask. It was a really perfectly centered one too. Batman 386, I think is kind of the pick of the range. First Black Mask, that's one I want, the 9.8 white pages. Batman 366 is, I think, another great pick, Joker cover. And we'll talk about the Joker movie coming out in October and how I think it might affect all these issues, so we'll get into that in a little bit. Batman 368, first Robin officially in costume. That's these two pretty good if you're on a budget. Batman 358, a little bit more expensive. I've seen people in a buy it now kind of trying to get $500 to $600 US for Batman 358. I ended up getting a pretty decent deal. It was $269.99 Canadian plus taxes, because I did buy it from like an authorized seller, so you gotta pay taxes in Canada on sales. Yeah, it was probably about $350 after shipping and taxes and everything for Batman 358, which is looking really good right now. Anytime I see them pop up, it's someone trying to get like $600 or $700 US, because again, in the 9.8s there's only 20 of them in the world. So that 357 to 402 run and all those keys we just talked about, I think those are awesome investments in the 9.8 white pages. They're all on the CGC census compared to Amazing Spider-Man, who I think, Spider-Man and Batman are pretty much just as iconic. But in Amazing Spider-Man, there's always like 600 or 700 or 800 of the key issues, whereas in Batman, for example, Batman 366 in the 9.8s, there's 139. 358, there's only 20. So in these Batman comics, there's just a lot less in the 9.8s. And that is because they were low printed, but just over time and as these are collected more, some of them are just thrown away or destroyed or somehow, and it just so happens that there's way less Batman comics from the same era than Spider-Man comics. And the prices are about the same, I would say, possibly even cheaper with the Batman. So to me, that's basically saying like buy Batman comics and maybe wait on the Amazing Spider-Man comics, especially wait until like Far From Home hype kind of starts to simmer down in the next couple months. Okay, so that 357 to 402 is the low print run. Any issues in there, any key issues in there in the 9.8 is great investments. Getting out of that low print run though, took me a while to find this Batman 428, Death of Jason Todd, obviously from a Death in the Family series. So in the 9.8, this issue specifically is really hard to find, and I think it's a really good investment. So just looking on the CGC census, 11.6% of all copies are 9.8s. And that's a really favorable ratio for a comic in 1988, made in 1988. Usually comics like in the late 80s, they end up getting to that 20 to 30% ratio. So, for a direct comparison, let's just say Batman 366, which we already looked at, 31% of all graded copies are 9.8s, whereas this one, 11.6% of all graded copies are 9.8s. So this one in the 9.8 is tougher to find, especially when you look at all of the ones that have been graded, which that ratio shows. There are only 139 of these in the 9.8s. So a tough ratio, only 139 in the entire world, and for a late 80s comic, that's really rare. Again, in the Spider-Man, for example, Spider-Man number 300, has about 950-ish 9.8s, whereas this one, 139. And this was made in 88, so was Amazing Spider-Man 300, made in 1988. And this is, if you look in the Overstreet price guide, this is the most expensive key after sort of issue 400. There's, issue 423, which I'll talk about here, I got it here. And then there's issue 428 is kind of the next big key. Death of Jason Todd, obviously Death in the Family, so the whole series is pretty much about this one issue. And because it's tough to find in the 9.8s, last year I really made a point to collect Batman comics, and I was looking for this one for almost a whole year. And it popped up in auction in Canada on a weekly auction too, so I believe I ended up paying I think 450 US for this. So that's getting almost close to 600 Canadian. And that was in a monthly auction, so that, you know, wasn't even like a buy it now where someone was trying to get a high price. You know, it's just so rare, so that I think whenever an auction pops up of this one, there's always going to be like 2 or 3 people that are like really willing to pay that, you know, whether it's $500 US or whatever they plan to bid. So I knew I kind of had to bid pretty high to grab this one, and so glad I did. It's a pristine Batman number 428, really hard to find. Yeah, death of Jason Todd, and I think, yeah, as far as, you know, a lot of the issues around this issue and, you know, getting over this issue, like 450s and everything like that, there's not really very many key issues, certainly not ones worth this much. And because this looks really good on the CGC census, again, only 139 of these, 11.6% of all graded copies are 9.8, so that's a really low ratio. So yeah, this one looking good on the census, and it's a cool key issue. So I would totally recommend this as a really good investment. And, you know, if you can't afford the 9.8, it's definitely a nice rough copy, and this one would be really good too. So Batman number 428 is another Batman pick from the 80s. I think is a great book to buy and collect and invest in even. And of course, we went over Batman 423 in a couple other videos lately. I have 2 copies of these. It's like one of my favorite issues, the Todd McFarlane cover. And yeah, this one not in that low print run, so 357 to 402, this one not being in that. But still looks really good on the census, and there's only, what was it, 81 Batman 423s in the 9.8s. So there's only 81 of these in the world, basically. And yeah, like I said, I have 2 of them. This is one, I'm a huge Todd McFarlane fan, obviously you guys probably know that from some of the other videos I did. So this is one I definitely wanted, and then, you know, me getting into the CGC census and sort of doing some research, noticing that there's only 81 of these in the world. That made me really excited to grab, you know, wanting to grab 1 or 2 as pretty much a pure investment. I think, yeah, Batman 423 is a really good investment because, you know, Todd McFarlane's so popular, and usually all the other Todd McFarlane keys, there's like 600, 700, 800, 900 copies of them, and I'm talking kind of the Amazing Spider-Man ones and Incredible Hulk 340. Whereas this, just as cool as Incredible Hulk 340, just as cool as Amazing Spider-Man 300, but there's only 81 of these. So I think this one, kind of, you know, I would say after the low print Batman run, this one and Batman 428 are the ones to get. Like, no question, if you're buying CGC 9.8 comics, get a Batman 423 and a Batman 428, you know, if you're really thinking about it from an investment perspective. But if you're staying in that low run, from 357 to 402, yeah, Batman 366 is one of my favorite issues ever. Love the Joker cover. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about Joker, because that Joker movie's coming out in October. So obviously I'm kind of recommending to buy Batman comics here. You know, you're getting into a bit of a hype stage with Batman, and that makes me a little bit worried about having higher prices for a lot of these comics during that time. So, you know, what I would probably do, the Joker movie comes out in October, I would probably pick away, if you're really dead set on, you know, getting some Batman comics and maybe taking action on what I'm talking about here. I would probably look at that low print run Batmans and maybe pick away during the summer here. But come September, I think you're going to start to see more hype for that Joker movie, which is coming out in October, start up again. And that might be a little bit too late to kind of get good prices, because, you know, with that hype machine, that's just going to bring in other kind of noobs, I guess, for lack of a better word, into the market, and they're not really aware of the prices, so they're just going to pay like high prices. They won't even know that they're paying high prices. But so yeah, what I would probably do is maybe pick away here until about September if you're looking to find some 9.8s. The closer that Joker movie comes, maybe back off a bit, wait, you know, go see the movie and enjoy it, and And then, you know, maybe I would say early next year, and obviously the Batman is coming out too, so there's going to be a little bit of time in between those movies where you could probably pick away at Batman comics too. But yeah, I find with Batman and like, you know, superheroes like Batman and Spider-Man, they're so iconic, they've been around for so long that when a movie comes out, it's not going to affect the issues like, you know, say like when the first Deadpool movie came out, or if like a movie comes out or a show comes out that kind of catches everyone off guard and it's somewhat of a newer, like a niche superhero, I would guess. Kind of like when Black Panther came out, that movie, you know, people really kind of jumped on the, you know, first Black Panther issue, and everything kind of skyrocketed. Whereas, you know, if a new Batman movie comes out, not like every Batman issue in the world is going to start skyrocketing because it's Batman, and you know, it's such an iconic superhero already. It's not going to get like a huge pop from like nobody knows about Batman to now everyone does, like how Deadpool was at that time. So I don't think the price swings are as pronounced, is kind of what I'm trying to say with Spider-Man and Batman. And even like Star Wars, I would say as well. Maybe Star Wars a little bit less because the hype train on Star Wars seems to just pick up when a Star Wars movie comes out for some reason even more. But yeah, Batman and Spidey, I don't think the movies come out and really affect all the issues. Like with Spider-Man, obviously the Mysterio issues are really hot right now. With Batman, I think The Killing Joke and Batman 404, which I could have easily brought out here. I did a video on that about a week ago. That's Year 1, Part 1. I think those are kind of the two issues that could get a nice pop from this Joker movie. And from the next Batman movie, because Robert Pattinson is so young, so I'm thinking it's probably going to be a Year 1 type of story with a young Batman. And then The Killing Joke, which there's kind of rumblings that the Joker movie is sort of like The Killing Joke, where The Killing Joke does some origin of Joker too. So those issues I think could get a decent spike, you know, when the movie comes out and everything. But I think, you know, the few months before the movie, not right around the movie, but you know, this summer, you can still kind of pick away at Batman and feel pretty safe about, you know, the prices not being super inflated because of like a movie or anything like that. I think you have to worry about that a little more with like niche superheroes and specific issues. But you know, like a Batman 423 or a 428, like I don't think Jason Todd's going to be in any of the new Batman movies or anything. So I think you could still pick away definitely at Batman comics if you find a good deal. Okay, so so glad to share with you my Batman comics. These are like pretty much my favorite comics. It's like this and kind of the Todd McFarlane Amazing Spider-Man's kind of neck and neck for my favorite comic books ever. So love the 1980s Batman comics. In the CGC 9.8, I think they're great buys, great investments. Yeah, keep your eyes out for good deals, and if you can pick up 9.8 white pages in, you know, any of these key issues from the 1980s Batman, I think is a really smart buy. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate all the support for the channel. Make sure to join the team and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Click that bell. I'm kind of on a roll with videos right now. I think I did about, yeah, maybe 6 or 7 this week. I might have did one every week. But I think tomorrow I'm going to take off, so kind of doing about 4 or 5 videos a week is my goal. So make sure to click that bell. You'll get notifications every time I post videos. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Super appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, don't forget, and I'll see you on the next video.